Men find all kinds of ways to believe any absurdity.
My irony meter just went critical. Sorry about that.
California, California. We forgot it as a nation, as a majority, as surely as I'm standing here. The strength of our nation will not rest on the power of government. Far from it. The strength of our nation will depend on the ability of each of ourselves to govern ourselves, to control ourselves, to sustain ourselves based on the 10 Commandments of God. James Madison, who wrote our Constitution.
A bunch of alarm bells just went off for those of you who are familiar with American history. Of course, that sounded nothing like James Madison, the man who championed separation of church and state. So I decided to do some research on it, which confirmed my suspicions. This quote is known as the 10 Commandments hoax, and it was discovered as a hoax back in 1995, so Phil is either lying or ignorant. The quote was made popular and attributed to Madison in the book The Myth of Separation Between Church and State, written by David Barton in 1989, a very outspoken evangelical Christian minister and activist. Because that quote ran so contrary to Madison's actual views, scholars attempted to track it down. Not only did Barton's two sources prove to be fruitless, one of which was traced back to a 1958 calendar published by Spiritual Mobilization, which had no source for the quote, but it wasn't in any material generated by Madison, period. Indeed, the editors of the Madison papers said, "The idea is inconsistent with everything we know about Madison's views on religion and government, views which he expressed time and time again in public and in private." David Barton has since admitted that it's misattributed and that it shouldn't be used. He removed the quote from his book and subsequently renamed his book to Original Intent, no doubt to mitigate the negative attention the old title was receiving. To see how scholars debunked it, refer to Public Education and the Public Good by historian Robert S. Alley, William and Mary, Bill of Rights Journal, Volume 4, Issue 1, Summer 1995, pages 316 through 318. Sadly, Phil, your audience will probably never hear the correction. Indeed, I'm seeing the same lie repeated all over the internet to this day in the year 2014, nearly 20 years after it was debunked. Furthermore, that wasn't the only controversy surrounding David Barton's fanciful claims about the Founding Fathers, but what's even more disconcerting is that David Barton, according to his website, wallbuilders.com, was involved in the development of the history/social studies standards for states such as Texas and California, and has helped produce history textbooks now used in schools across the nation. So, this evangelical minister who popularizes lies about the Founding Fathers apparently helped produce history textbooks. Wonderful! Well, how much harm could he have done? Well, I looked to a book that was published just before the quote was debunked in 1994 called America's God and Country Encyclopedia of Quotations for use in speeches, papers, debates, and essays, and sure enough, you can find the bogus quote on page 411 of the encyclopedia. I then went on to look at the sources on page 780 of said encyclopedia, which had 0 primary sources, instead citing David Barton's debunked book and his 2 fruitless sources. But also you can see how the quote managed to attract a sad, sorry list of other published materials produced by people who were duped by the same quote, including Rush Limbaugh in his See, I Told You So, and an executive proclamation by the governor of Mississippi in his efforts to institute a Christian Heritage Week. So, not only is this falsehood parroted by popular media personalities like Phil Robertson and Rush Limbaugh, but it's bleeding into the government, creating a precedent based on falsehood. Madison is rolling in his grave. It makes you wonder how many lies about history people are getting away with feeding to the ignorant, doesn't it?
Men find all kinds of ways to believe any absurdity.
Now, if you please, to cleanse our palates, allow me to give you an actual quote from James Madison. His proposed wording for the First Amendment is as follows: "The civil rights of none shall be abridged on account of religious belief or worship, nor shall any national religion be established." And that, Phil, unlike your quote, didn't come from a spiritual calendar. It came from page 451 of the Annals of Congress, House of Representatives, First Congress, First Session, June 8th, 1789. Now put that in your pipe and smoke it. James Madison was vehemently, publicly against an alliance between government and religion. Anyone who knows anything about James Madison at least knows that.
I noticed something, California, correct me when I'm wrong. I'm a C-plus man. I told the other group that a while ago. You said C-plus man, that means that half of us are smarter than you. That's right, but I'm smarter than the rest of you. I'm in a pretty good position here. Children, honor your father and mother. I notice when children dishonor their father and mother, they drive too fast, smoking dope, tearing up people's property. Law enforcement, they catch them. You say, where do they take them, Phil? They take them to the courthouse. Juvenile court. Your children, my children, atheist children, believers' children. They violate Commandment No. 5. They take them downtown to the courthouse.
First of all, if our laws are based on the Ten Commandments, which is where you're taking this, then why just skip over the first half of them? Could it be because not only are they not American laws, but the Constitution guarantees our right to violate those commandments? The very same commandments which would have gotten you a death sentence in biblical times. Furthermore, there's no American law that requires you to honor your parents. You've taken a bunch of unrelated crimes and attributed them to dishonoring your parents, as if all parents teach their children what is right and good. Not every parent is a good parent, far from it. And to be moral, sometimes it requires a departure from certain parental influences. You, of all people, should know that, Phil.
Do not murder. You want to try that one on for size? You commit murder, law enforcement, they're coming. Look, when they catch you, you say, I am going to have a court date because I murdered my neighbor instead of loving him. Yes, court date coming up. Do not commit adultery. If your woman, boys, catches you committing adultery, there's a strong possibility that you're going to have a court date coming up. Been cheaper to keep her. Let's see. Do not steal. You burglarize someone's home, the laws catch you. Where are you going to end up? Courthouse. You rob a bank, they catch you. You're going to the courthouse whether you believe in God or not. Do not lie. What did they do with Martha Stewart? The woman's got all the money, the cook. What did they do to her? Where'd they carry her when she lied to the feds? Where did they take her? Courthouse. Do not covet. You spend more than you have. You want more than you need. You say, the bill collector start calling. Next thing you know, we have bankruptcy proceedings. You say, where's that done? Down to the courthouse. I'm a C-plus man, deep out of Louisiana. If you're going to end up at the courthouse anyway, California, for violating the Ten Commandments, that may be a pretty good place to put them.
Phil, do you honestly believe that it was the Ten Commandments which pioneered those laws? Do you think that before the Ten Commandments, people didn't mind being killed, robbed, cheated on, or lied to? No, of course not. And not only does logic point to this, but history proves it. 600 years before the Ten Commandments were written, the Code of Ur-Nammu was carved into stone in Mesopotamia. Rule number 1 was if a man commits a murder, that man must be killed. Rule number 2 was if a man commits a robbery, he will be killed. 30 more laws follow, which include rules against kidnapping, vandalism, and rape, all curiously absent from the Ten Commandments. This is the bottom line. Gods don't invent laws. People invent laws. In any first world country, a lawmaker is a bona fide profession. People write them, propose them, ratify them all the time. Too much so, in my opinion. This is done because somebody invariably does something that someone else doesn't want them to do, so a law is created to invoke the power of the government against them. For this reason, it's easy to imagine why murder, theft, and perjury would be fairly high on the list of things that people don't want other people to do to them. It's not rocket science, Phil. One need not invoke the most intelligent being in existence, unseen on high, to understand why people would want murder to be illegal. So, no, Christianity doesn't get to claim that it pioneered the illegality of murder and then plant the Ten Commandments at the courthouse as if that is what inspired people's dislike of having their lives prematurely ended. Moron!